The banking system is catching on, the government is catching on, legal system is catching on, et cetera, et cetera. It's about to get so much harder for us to create businesses, get access to capital for businesses, et cetera, due to this one topic that I'm about to cover. You know what makes a scam effective is it typically preys on people who are desperate. The majority of the time, scams come out and become pervasive and become effective is because they're usually targeted to a group of people who are gonna go for it. They're in a financial or situational circumstances that makes them susceptible. I always preach about proximity. Proximity is so important when it comes to really anything in life, but especially when it comes to information around commerce, finances, social movements, etc. Proximity is everything. All of us have heard, if you're the everyday adult, 9 out of 10 times you've heard of how people would say a person can say something to one person, that person says something to another person, that person says that same thing to another person, so on and so forth. By the time it gets to the last person, it's going to be a totally different statement than what was said originally from the first person. That is literally, in a nutshell, an analogy of proximity. It starts at the source. The people closest to it get the best, dibs on the correct form of that information. By the time it gets all the way out, it's completely mutilated from what it was when it started. This is an American issue, period. But as a culture of people, when we start talking about Black America, we are the furthest away in proximity from the origins of real quality information. Economically, socially, so on and so forth. We are the furthest away, generally speaking. Not every single one of us, but as a culture of people as a whole, we are the furthest away from the origins of information. That basically means by the time it gets to us, it ain't shit anymore. That basically means by the time we find out about that business opportunity, that investment opportunity, that tax strategy, the real estate opportunity, whatever it is, by the time it gets to us, it's a mutilated form of what it was when it first got out. This is what's happening in the financial system and in the business world right now when it comes to LLCs and corporations and starting businesses. Environment we're in today, economically, generally speaking, is already hostile and unstable. Banks, financial institutions are already cracking down like crazy. COVID with the PPP situation is one of the most live examples of a scam that people tried to run on PPP, with businesses. And the government has slowly put its infrastructure together to come back around and get on people's asses about it. And to expand the IRS and to actually start arresting people from long paper trails because people think they're getting away with something. We are the biggest victims to trying to use LLCs and corporations, etc., for the next hustle or the next scam or the next play. What I'm saying is a fraction of us start businesses legitimately, for legitimate reasons with a legitimate intent. There's two foundations. Ideally, at some point, you want both of them to come together, but there's two foundations to getting a successful business off the ground. The first is going to be having a legitimate skill set, value that you can provide in the marketplace that will generate income on a consistent basis. The second is going to be having financial means, having really great credit, great income, great cash flow, whatever the case may be, having at least one or more strong financial metrics that you can add into the pot of a business. So you may not be the one who makes the food or produces the product or sells the good or service, but you have the credit that got the entity approved for the capital. You have the money that you injected in that got everything off the ground. You have to have one or the other. And at some point, obviously, you have to have both. Most of us in our culture and community tend to have all the creativity and ideas in the world, and oftentimes, sometimes skill sets. We don't have the financial capacity, and we don't have the infrastructure to build around our skill sets or our creativity or our ideas that allows us to exercise that either. Many of us, and I'm a small business banker by trade, so you're hearing this from somebody who's literally working around this on a regular basis. Too few of us are trying our hardest to start businesses because of all of the media hype that is out now about LLC strategies and tax strategies and how to use businesses to do this and to do that. Write off your vacations with this LLC and this corporate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of these different hacks and strategies. If this was true education, there's no reason to only put out the potential benefits of the opportunity. without putting the education behind it of everything it takes to make those strategies work. You know, in order to have a successful tax strategy around an LLC, meaning that you're able to like keep more of your money in your pocket, you have to actually be making money. It sounds really simple and crazy when I say it, but I'm telling you how so many people start LLCs and start businesses. This is really a problem, and I'm speaking on this the way I am because this is making it so much harder for the legitimate group of us that are really trying to start businesses, really trying to get access to capital, really trying to add value to the marketplace to get it off the ground. Why? Because so many people are full of shit in front of the banks. Fraud over here, fraud over there on the government loans. Like there's a lot of people got PPP loans that were fraud. And you had a lot of legitimate businesses that didn't get PPP loans because that money was finite. So inherently, this selfish ass act of trying to finesse the system ends up shutting the door on all of us, basically, indirectly at some point in time. Because at the end of the day, we're the furthest away from the quality, true information. All of these hacks and hype about tax strategies and loopholes with LLCs and etc. have been out for decades, if not hundreds of years. Do your research. The tax code in this country is damn near older than the country itself. All of these different strategies and tactics have been around for forever. It's just getting to us. So we're busy trying to solve generational deficits with backdoor strategies, hacks. And what's happening is the banking system is wisening up. The government, the portion of the government, the IRS and these different legal aspects of the government that monitor over these things, these various bureaus, they're wising up and catching on to the trend of many of Americans, but so many of us in particular, a group that can afford it the least, by the way. One of the worst byproducts of slavery when it went down, when you study and look at it, I'm not saying I'm a scholar, but just from research, one of the worst components wasn't just how we were treated in America and in the Western world where we were brought. It wasn't just what was stolen resource-wise from Africa. One of the biggest hits that Africa took from the slave trade situation was the loss of human resources, human capital. The able-bodied, strong, viable men and women and young adults and leaders and all these other people who would have been valuable portions of the social infrastructure in Africa was snatched into slavery. That was one of the hardest parts of slavery for Africa as a continent. That same concept applies for us here in the United States. When you think about how many of us are going to end up going to jail, getting sued, etc., for trying to play the game dirty when it comes to these LLCs and these new little fancy strategies and hacks, manipulating banks, etc., that is human capital leaving our community. That is human ingenuity and capability and labor that is no longer in our community for some period of time. The loss of resources. Not only are you losing the time from going to jail or getting sued and getting set back, you're also getting whatever you had taken away from you most likely. You're getting your car repossessed, your home that you got repossessed. So everything that you were working towards, everybody around you leaning on you that you were looking to protect is as exposed as ever because we don't have patience. Because of everything we've been through, we're desperate, the majority of us, a large portion of us, we're desperate. So we don't have patience to build real businesses, real skills, and build our finance. It takes years to do these things. The legitimate way takes years, in some cases decades, depending on the circumstances, to become something fruitful. We don't want to wait, we can't do it. So when somebody tells us that we can create an LLC overnight and start writing off all our expenses and our vacations and we can hack these banks and get access to all this money and finally start buying the cars we wanted to buy and the jewelry and, taking fancy trips and putting on artificial facades on social media, we can't help but try it. Many of us can't help but try it, but we're closing the door. We're tightening the hole of opportunity that's already been either not accessible at all or barely accessible to us all this time. Now we're closing it off further or giving an excuse for it to be closing off further because so many of us can't be trusted. So now if that bank did offer a $50,000 line of credit or a $100,000 line of credit without documentation, basically going off of whatever financial reputation, pulling your credit in a banking relationship, et cetera, if these kind of programs were around at one point in time, those doors are closing. Why are they closing? Because so many people manipulated them with no intent to actually put it to use in the marketplace to create real value and function as agreed with that institution. So now that institution is scarred. Now they're taking losses they can't afford to take. And now, like any entity is going to do, it's going to start putting up barriers of entry. is going to start trying to profile where the losses came from. And that's crazy because now, inadvertently, the very prejudice that blocked us out of the system for the longest, we are recreating, in a sense of speaking, because now they're going to be looking for the patterns of the people that created the fraud. Think about it. They're going to be following and keeping up with the patterns of the people that created the fraud. Does that mean automatically that Black people as a whole are going to, be ostracized per se? Maybe not. But it does make it harder for somebody who functions like you, who may have set up an entity similar to you, who may have similar data points of where they lived or some other data points that are being tracked or measured that we may or may not know about. That's like the last person that committed fraud. It's like any of us from a dating perspective. At the end of the day, if you go through a traumatizing negative experience with a certain type of person, 9 out of 10 times, if you run across somebody else that reminds you of that person, even if they totally different, you're going to have alarm bells going off. There's going to be reservation around it. It's the same thing in business. Banks, financial institutions are going to be leery around the profiles of the individuals that created the fraud that is running rampant in the system right now. Like the Chase glitch situation that went down, a few months back at the time of this recording, where some jackasses fell for another internet scheme and thought that some kind of way or another, you using your own banking relationship to put fraudulent checks into an ATM and turning around and withdrawing it at the window was a Chase problem. It wasn't fraud or illegal on your end. It's a Chase problem. It's a bank problem. It's retarded as hell. But this is the desperation that's in our community. And this is the behavior and the actions and the decisions that's going to lead to the financial system tightening up in an already tight economic and unstable economic environment in general. We already struggle as a culture and as a group of people in general getting access, period. Layer on the fact the economic system in the global marketplace is already struggling and the domestic marketplace is already struggling and unstable and uncertain. And then you layer on top of the excuse of, somebody that looks like you or functions like you or lives in your zip code or a group of people that have all these different markers similar to yours were the ones we took a lot of the losses on at this window of time in the past. So now, instead of being able to take that $50,000, $100,000 for that legitimate hair salon, legitimate barbershop, legitimate mechanic, et cetera, legitimate freelancer, that person now is going to end up, when they could have gotten access to their capital because, maybe their credit is decent, but they don't have any other docs to support. They could have gotten access to their capital. Now they need tax returns. Now they need financial statements. We don't think that far. We don't think that big. All we think of is for ourselves, the here and now, and our opportunity, we think, to come up briefly for a moment. So I wanted to put this video out because I work in the financial industry, the banking industry. I'm watching the changes. I'm watching the door close slowly, and it's going to further the gap from those who have and the have-nots. Watch what I tell you. Even though I believe money's about to flow totally different than it has the last 4 years and the next 4 years, even though these opportunities are about to open up in various areas, I want you to watch how difficult, those of you who are monitoring and keeping up with this, I want you to watch how difficult it is for the people on the ground, especially those of us, to get access to the same type of resources that we once were starting to get our foot in the door on, just because so many of us are making the wrong decision. It used to be MLMs back in the past, a generation or two back, multi-level marketing schemes. Now it's business. Now it's banking. I'm telling you now, what's going to end up happening is a lot of us are going to end up getting, not us, not me, but a lot of people are going to end up getting locked up. A lot of people are going to get sued, garnished. A lot of people are going to end up setting themselves back. And that's going to ripple out to the families that they were supposed to be taking care of. It's going to ripple out throughout the community. And that's on top of all of the economic issues that are happening broadly for us as Americans, period. Watch what I tell you. Comment down below and let me know if you know of anybody who's fell in this category that has played the system, a bunch of scams and schemes, constantly plotting, fake businesses, etc. Comment down below and let me know if you know of these type of people who are making it hard for the rest of us. Let me know down in the comment section down below. To all of my pioneers, welcome back. To my new viewers, welcome in. As always, I want each and every one of you to stay focused, stay in motion. I'll see y'all soon.